everyone, welcome back. And in this video, it's a continuation of the previous two videos that I had taken, ways to split user stories. So in the previous video I took, which was part 2, I would have taken two types of user stories. And if you notice, way in which you can split user stories, which is front end and back end, was not covered, and I said I'll take it in this video. So in this video I wanted to focus more on why never to split a user story like this, which is front end and back end, unless it's really necessary. So if you want to view the videos on which the ways in which you can split user stories, I have provided both the links in the description box. You can access those videos by clicking on the links that I have provided. So let's get into this. So why should we not split a user story as front end and back end? This might be a question that is in your mind by now. So the reason is, it is not a hard and fast rule, okay, that every user story must be split as, must not be split as front end and back end, but it's just that it's not recommended, okay? So you can do it unless it's really necessary. So when I say this, think about the value you are trying to deliver per story, okay? So every user story we create, we try to deliver a value to the user, okay? So when you write a story, think about what value it's going to provide to a user. And when you think about that, just think about for a second whether, if I write a front end story, only a front end story, will that provide value to the user? Or if I'm going to write only a back end story, is that going to provide value to the user? If that's not going to provide value, then definitely maybe you should not be splitting the story in that way. Okay, so here's why. I'll give you some examples. So let's say here, the requirement from the client is, I want to filter my product based on product types, brand and price. Okay, so imagine there is a filter, and this is the filter that they are, suggesting and they want. So if I'm to split this user story as a front end and back end, okay, sometimes it's not even a user story that teams split. So if you look at this, the user should be able to view the various filter options, okay? It's a front end story, okay, saying that the user should be able to view this, okay, the different filter options. And the next story, if you see, is build filter logic to filter data. Okay, so this is a back-end kind of stuff where you're building the logic. So now look at this and tell me, with these two stories, okay, that I have created, just tell me what value is it, delivering. So imagine if I just send out this one front-end story for production, okay, and I release this. What value does the user get if they can just see the filters and not be able to filter the data? No value. If you take the second one, what value does the user get if there's some backend logic in place, but still they're not able to filter the data again? You might tell them, hey, I've built this backend logic. They're like, okay, fine, you built the logic, but still I'm not able to solve my problem. So there's no value, okay? So in this case, when you write front end and back end user stories, most of the time you would either have to move both these stories to production at the same time to deliver the ultimate value to the user, where the user will be able to solve their problem. But if you're going to, for worst case scenarios, you're not able to move a particular card to production, then definitely the other card, which is dependent, is not going to create any value even if you move that to production. Okay, so that's the main reason why most of the time it's recommended not to split stories into front end and back end. Might as well write it down together, and that's what is here. So now the requirement is, for the same requirement, the user wants to filter the products based on product type, brand and price. Write down the user story which is going to provide full-fledged value to the user. So if you take this user story, as a user I should be able to filter my products so that I would be able to quickly access the product I wish to see. Okay, so the acceptance criteria over here is going to say that the user should be able to choose the filter options. Okay, so you're viewing it and you should be able to choose the filter options front end again. And again, I'm saying, when the user submits the data, the user should be able to see the data that matches with the filtered conditions. there's backend over here, and also if there are no matches, then the user should be able to view the message, no matches found. So there's front end, back end, and both are integrated. And now if I move this story to production, yes, it's going to create value. And that goes without saying, yes, there is value. Okay. So that's the reason I say it's always better to write down full-fledged user stories with front end and back end rather than separately creating stories for front end and back end. So now there are some scenarios in which you might have to create user stories as front end and back end. And here's where I'll tell you. So if you have a full-fledged user story, okay, the best times in which it's suited is when you have a small team, okay, and most of the developers are full stack developers. So now if you have a small team, and most of the developers are going to be full stack developers, most of them are going to be able to handle front end and back end. So if you give them one story, they are going to build the entire solution, okay, and it's going to be a full-fledged solution and it's going to deliver value. Okay, so you have a small team, you needn't split up multiple user stories. You can split up your user stories in this way. But now, if you see the second way in which you split up user stories based on front end and back end, some scenarios where it actually suits is when you have a large team and that team consists of UI and backend developers, a mixture and a group of these two different developers. Okay, so the reason why I say that is, now let's say you have a huge team, you have so many UI developers and you have so many backend developers. So definitely there would be a time when UI developers would be able to do the front end part of it, back end developers would work on the back end logic, and there needs to be a time where both integrate. Okay, so there will be a time when you have to give the UI developers a task. So at that time, you can split up user stories as front end and give them the user story. There might be some back end developers who are available, so you split that as a back end story and give them the logic. And when someone else is available, give them that chance to do the integration. So in this way, every developer on the team has something to work on. So once they are done, they would pair with the other developer and they would integrate that, and then you have the full-fledged story. So this is one scenario in which you can go with the front end and back end. Another scenario is when static data is required. And when static data is required, that is, maybe let's say the customers say that I just want to view data on my front end. For example, like a welcome message, welcome to app X. Okay, so that's just going to be front end, there's no back end logic to it. So at that time you just have to add that data as a static data. And yes, at that time you would only require a back end a front end story card without any back end logic. So these are some scenarios in which this might suit. Okay, so in this video I hope that you got an understanding of when to go with splitting user stories as front end and back end, and when to create full-fledged user stories. And you would know the reason why I say not to split user stories as front end and back end. So I hope you got an understanding of this and it was helpful. So if you like this video, please do give this a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed, please do subscribe to this channel, and also do share your feedbacks. Thank you.